The cherished characters from Brian O'Malley's best-selling graphic novels are taken on an alien journey and Scott Pilgrim takes off. The narrative follows Michael Cera's character Scott Pilgrim as he pursues Ramona Flowers, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who he describes as the girl of his dreams. He soon learns that in order to pursue her further, he needs contend with her 7 malevolent ex-girlfriends. While Scott was extensively followed in the 2010 cult film adaptation and the original novels, the new ending places him in the background and shows more interest in Ramona. The action comedy series debuted on Netflix on November 17, 2023, starring all of the actors from the original film in leading roles. In the first episode of the show, Sadhya Beba's character, Matthew Patel, challenges Scott in combat, but Scott loses. Following his loss, Scott vanishes and leaves behind a few pennies. In the upcoming episode, Ramona declares he's alive, after having a dream in which Scott is calling to her. In an attempt to find Scott, Ramona sets out to confront every member of the League of Evil Exes. Is Scott ever found by Ramona? And does she still have love feelings for him after that protracted fight? What becomes of every ex-partner? For all the information you require regarding the conclusion of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, keep watching. Throughout its 8 30-minute episodes, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off takes a million distinct, but joyful, diverse turns. In the course of the show, Scott is sent into the future and meets an older, Will Ford-voiced version of himself who is out to get revenge on Ramona for dumped him. At 37 years old, not much has changed in this version of Scott. He continues to be naive and immature, and he continues to live with Wallace Wells, Kieran Culkin. Although the younger Scott is devastated by his failed marriage to Ramona, he still wishes to go back to the present and make amends. Conversely, the friends of Scott and Ramona, as well as the other members of the League of Evil Exes, have forged new bonds with one another. They give up on their scheme to ruin Ramona's love life after she confronts them, and instead focus on making their own lives happier. Now that Stephen Stills, Mark Webber, and Ellen Wong, Naj Shah, have written a musical based on Scott's life, Gideon Graves is in a romantic relationship with Julie Powers, Aubrey Plaza, and Lucas Lee, Chris Evans, is aiming for a career away from the spotlight. In the future, an older Scott tells Ramona that he purposefully stole present Scott away from her via a time machine so that they would never meet. The younger Scott then meets the elder Ramona with Wallace's assistance, and she assists him in getting back to the present. After they get back together, Scott tells Ramona what transpired. He also expresses regret to Knives for betraying her in this scenario, saying, "I probably shouldn't have been dating you in the first place." It seems that society disapproves of a 23-year-old dating a high school student. However, Scott and Ramona still have love difficulties to overcome. The two come to the realization that every time they try to kiss, a force field appears because of unfinished business. In order to determine which of their ex-partners is the source of the problem, Knives offers that they confront them during the premiere of her new musical. Scott and Ramona learn that the exes aren't the source of the force field after speaking with them. Scott, Ramona, the bad exes, and the rest of the group are sent to the cosmic highway that Scott and Ramona have seen in their dreams time and time again during the musical performance. They see a much older version of Scott there, who cautions the current Scott, saying, "I told you to stay away from Ramona." He acknowledges that in order to keep them away, he used a K field, which stands for anti-kiss field. The older Scott admits that his scheme failed to stop the couple from dating, claiming that Ramona and Scott in the current day eventually managed to defy expectations and tie the knot. Despite their best efforts, the group is unable to bring down the older version of Scott. When Scott defies the group from the present, an even older Ramona shows up and chastises her. Present-day Ramona seeks guidance from her past self and ultimately picks herself over Scott. The younger Scott calls her Super Ramona, and she embraces the older version of herself. Superb after sending the elder Scott home, Ramona gives the current Scott a kiss. She tells him, "I run away from the thing I love, and I love you, Scott." Everything resumes as the entire group heads back to the performance, the way that Scott and Ramona kiss now. The epilogue indicates that Wallace is in Paris, where he meets his future sugar daddy. Lucas Lee works as a barista. Ramona is a stunt double on movie sets, and Knives and Stephen are still a musical partnership. Then, in a suspenseful sequence after the credits, Julia and Gideon are shown examining multiple monitors that depicts Scott's life. "It's time for the actual game to start," says Gideon. Will Scott and Ramona eventually get together? We can say with confidence, yes, in the last scene. However, we are unsure of how long.